Have you ever truly paused to consider what a man gives away when he lies with someone? At first glance, it may appear simple, just bodies meeting, a moment of passion shared. But beneath the surface, something far more profound is unfolding. It's not merely the act, nor the physicality. It's something intangible, yet undeniably present. What he offers often, without even realizing it, is his soul. A soul aching, yearning, silently pleading to be acknowledged. Not just by the other, but by himself. He offers a hunger, a deep, insatiable hunger, not for flesh, but for something far more elusive: validation, tenderness, the elusive comfort of being chosen. Yet this offering rarely comes in honest form. It arrives disguised as lust, as bravado, as the illusion of control. Look closer. It's never just skin brushing against skin. Beneath the choreography of desire, there is a river of emotion, hidden, powerful, unspoken. At his core, what a man seeks isn't sex. It is recognition, to be seen fully, to be accepted, even in his fractured state. So many men, in moments of intimacy, do not seek conquest. They seek comfort. They kneel not for pleasure, but for the nurturing they were denied. And what appears physical, so raw, so urgent, is often spiritual in nature. What seems like lust is, in truth, a generational void cloaked in the costume of dominance. When intimacy is real, it tears down the polished facade. It exposes the trembling boy behind the man, the soul behind the performance. That's where the psychology of Jung enters, not as theory, but as revelation. In these moments, the body becomes a messenger, the shadow becomes a reflection. But only those willing to look past the mask can glimpse the truth beneath. Carl Jung never saw desire as something shallow or instinctive. To him, it was a sacred bridge of dialogue between the conscious mind and the unconscious realms. He famously said, "Every act of intimacy reveals more than it appears," and he was right. Desire doesn't erupt from the body alone. Its roots twist deep into the psyche. Every touch, every craving, every surrender has a hidden origin, buried memories, its unmet needs, unspoken griefs. Sex is never just an act. It is a transfer of energy, of emotions, of unhealed shadows. And when the wrong woman enters a man's life, when there is no alignment, no awareness, that exchange becomes destructive. What should have been sacred turns draining. A weariness he feels afterward is not from physical exertion. It's the ache of something deeper, of giving away pieces of himself for fragments of connection, and that fatigue. It doesn't stem from muscles. It rises from the soul. Every time a man gives himself without presence, without depth, without grounding, he is not sharing. He is sacrificing. Trading wholeness for brief illusions of worth. Yes, the female body is sacred, but so is his. When two temples meet without clarity, the result is chaos. A disordered storm of energies colliding without guidance. You think you're just having sex? But you are, in truth, opening portals, and not every portal leads to safety. As this story continues to unfold, you'll begin to notice what's been quietly hidden in plain sight. Patterns you've felt but never named. Questions you've carried but never voiced. This journey isn't about shame or blame. It's about finally learning to see what no one ever taught you to understand. Because when a man truly surrenders, in intimacy, he does not just show his body. He reveals hidden parts of the soul. The fear of rejection. The insecurity he has long learned to cover with strength. The silence, dense and weighty, carrying echoes of an invisible past. At first, it might seem like just another encounter. But when intimacy deepens, something unexpected begins to surface. A man does not simply bring his body into the space. He brings the entire story of who he is, including the parts he has tried to forget. Visceral intimacy, at its core, is not about sex. It's about emotional nakedness, raw, unguarded, and often terrifying. It's the kind of vulnerability that appears in a quiet moment, in the space between touches, in a gaze held just a second too long. And in that pause, the invisible child within him emerges. The child who didn't want to earn love, who only ever wanted to receive it freely, Can anything be more frightening than that inner exposure being seen without the armor, without the roles? How many men, in that exact moment, feel something breaking inside, while their faces remain composed? The mask of strength doesn't collapse in rage or noise. It dissolves in silence. A silence that speaks louder than words. One unexpected touch can stir old wounds. A tender gesture may uncover a scar he never had the language to explain. Jung once said the unconscious is always communicating in moments of intimacy. It doesn't whisper, it screams. The body becomes the stage, the unconscious, the actor, and the soul long suppressed finally begins its monologue. This is the hidden reason many men retreat just as closeness begins. Because to be truly intimate is to confront the emotional mirror. And not everyone is ready to see who stares back. The unraveling of masculine strength doesn't start with chaos or collapse. It begins with something much softer, a single touch, a word, a breath that finds its way through the cracks of his armor. And when that happens, something ancient within him stirs. It's not weakness, but awakening. Yet that awakening is just the first step. Most men have been conditioned to believe that giving pleasure is about skill, performance, control, master the moves, impress her, validate yourself. But true desire, the kind that binds souls, not just bodies, moves far deeper than technique. To give pleasure from that place is no longer an act, it's a sacred offering. A return to the part of him that has long been silenced. Because beneath all the layers of defense, every man holds within him a gentle, vulnerable part. A softness the world taught him to reject. Jung called this the animate of feminine aspect. Within the man, and here lies the paradox. When a man truly surrenders in intimacy, he is not simply reaching out to touch her. He is finally touching the part of himself he buried. Sacred pleasure is not born of dominance. It is born of presence, full, overwhelming, unapologetic presence. When that happens, the body ceases to be just flesh, it becomes an oracle, a sacred mirror. And through that mirror, he finally sees himself, not the curated version, not the mask, but the truth. And in that ritual of connection, something stirs that no technique can mimic. Desire transforms. It is no longer about the physical. It becomes a movement of the soul. Because ritual sexuality never begins in the body, begins in stillness. In the willingness to listen without words, to let that long-banished sensitivity rise from exile. It's not about performing. It's not about proving. It's about remembering. Reconnecting with who he has always been, beneath the layers of protection and performance. And when that moment comes, when he allows himself to feel it, all pleasure becomes something far beyond sensation. It becomes healing. But for many men, that kind of surrender still feels far too dangerous. When a man truly surrenders in intimacy, he does not just touch her body. He touches that hidden part of himself. Sacred pleasure is not about control. Many say they want love. But if we look deeper, beneath the surface-level desires and declarations, what often hides there is something more fragile, more urgent, longing not for connection, but for approval, quiet craving to be seen and accepted, not just as a partner, but as a person. True desire doesn't always arise from the wish to share intimacy. It often stems from something far older, deeper, an ancestral ache, a generational emptiness. The desperate need passed down silently to finally be chosen. It's as though in every relationship, an unseen child waits at the threshold of the soul, waiting for someone to say, "I see you, you matter, you don't have to earn this." But this is also the moment where the trap sets in motion, because when the thirst to be loved outweighs the ability to love oneself, a dangerous transformation begins. The man starts to shapeshift. He adapts. He folds himself into someone else's expectations. Piece by piece, he erases himself, pouring up his authenticity in exchange for scraps of validation. You've probably seen that man. Maybe you've even been that man, the one who's endlessly kind, always available, saying yes when he wants to say no. And still somehow he remains unseen. It's not that he's doing something wrong. It's that he's caught in an emotional loop that keeps repeating. a pattern carved from pain, not from love. Excessive kindness is often just pain wearing the mask of virtue. He's not truly giving from fullness. He's performing, hoping love will be the reward. His affection becomes a form of silent pleading, delivered through the language of perfectionism. And this is where the projection begins. Quietly, subtly, he starts to expect others to fill the void he refuses to acknowledge. He hopes the other will heal him, will love him into wholeness, will save him from his own absence of self-acceptance. But that expectation leads only to deeper disillusionment. Because salvation doesn't come from outside. It takes profound courage to pause and ask the hard question. What am I really trying to prove? Because often, that drive to be the ideal partner is not love, it's the echo of low self-worth dressed up as devotion. And when a man finally confronts this truth, something remarkable happens. The stage lights dim, script begins to fall away. He steps out of the theater of performance and begins to show up as he truly is. He meets his raw presence, the part of him that does not need to be flawless in order to be loved. But to reach that level of authenticity, he must confront the most hidden parts of himself, his own shadow. And in that confrontation, everything changes. Carl Jung once revealed a truth that cuts with surgical precision. What you do not make conscious will appear in your life as fate. And this is exactly what unfolds for countless men. They think they are choosing freely, but they are simply replaying unresolved wounds. Old pain, unexamined and unhealed, drives their behavior without their awareness. The shadow what is? Hidden, wounded, rejected takes control, silently, invisibly. And so every new connection becomes a reenactment. The same pain, different face, the same fear, new setting. This is the heartbreaking cycle. One wound, many repetitions. That's why true intimacy often feels like walking through a minefield. Not because the other person is inherently harmful, but because the pain inside is still raw. He arrives in love wearing the mask of strength, but behind that, he is collapsing. He hopes the other will fill a void that only self-acceptance can. He'll dot in this battle between exposure and defense. The body becomes symbolic. It becomes either a fortress built to keep love out or a bridge leading toward something sacred, toward healing. Ultimately, it all comes down to how he perceives emotional nakedness. Does he see it as a threat or an invitation to heal? The shadow is not the part he hates most. It's the part he hides, even from himself. The panic of being rejected. The terror of not being enough. The silent thirst for approval that still haunts him. That fear of being weak. That invisible thirst for approval. All of it lives there in the unconscious, waiting for its moment to emerge. And where does it emerge? That buried longing, that hidden wound. It surfaces quietly, yet powerfully. The touch that awakens a memory long forgotten. In the mirror of intimacy, where emotions echo louder than words. In the recurring choices he makes again and again that feel like coincidence, but are anything but. Every man at some point in his life will unknowingly project onto another what he has yet to discover within himself. He looks at a woman and, without realizing it, turns her into everything. Lover, mother, confidant, savior, becomes the embodiment of his unresolved longings. But the problem isn't that he loves. The problem is why he loves expecting her to fill what he has never dared to face inside himself. That is not love. It is the shadow's silent projection. A desperate reenactment of ancestral emptiness. A phantom yearning for an affection he never received. And almost inevitably, that projection leads to disappointment. Because when you place someone on a pedestal, you are not truly seeing them. You are seeing a mirror. Not a reflection of who she is, but of your own wounded soul. That idealization becomes a trap, an emotional cage made of fantasy. Because when the illusion breaks and it always does, what once felt divine begins to feel hollow. The pedestal cracks, and with one mistake, the entire image shatters. The man who once worshipped now withdraws, desire turns to distance. Adoration becomes resentment. Why? Because he tried to find outside what he was meant to awaken within.
Back to sleeping.
Animal. that silent sensitivity, that deep, still presence buried beneath years of performance and survival. In the relentless search to feel whole, many men become lost. They confuse emotional intensity with true connection. They mistake lack for love and attention for salvation. But the truth is this: no woman, no matter how extraordinary, can be the perfect mirror for a man who has not yet dared to meet himself. Because the emotional mirror begins within. To look into that mirror-naked, unfiltered roar requires a courage few possess. Yet it is that very courage that opens the doorway to transformation. Most men spend a lifetime silently waiting for validation, for approval, for the soft reassurance that whispers, "You are enough." But the brutal truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is this: that validation never lasts, because it comes from outside. And anything that comes from outside can and will leave. True healing begins the moment a man understands he no longer needs to beg for affection. The thirst to be chosen is only satisfied when he chooses himself first. Self-knowledge is the key, but not as theory, not as another book or intellectual concept. It must become a living, breathing practice. A discipline of looking inward with presence, of listening without words, sitting with the existential void without flinching or fleeing. And it is in that very void, where the soul feels broken and lost, that the true masculine awakening begins. In that sacred space, intimacy stops being a performance. It stops being a game of roles. It becomes a mirror of truth. And desire, when it rises from that deep-rooted place, no longer pleads. It doesn't beg for love or chase approval. It invites. It moves gently, dances with confidence and depth, as a natural extension of the soul. That's the precise moment when sexuality transforms into ritual. No longer an escape. No longer a distraction, but a return. A return to wholeness. A place where sacred pleasure no longer springs from emptiness, but from fullness. A place where the shadow is no longer an enemy, but becomes an oracle. And where silence, rather than being something to fear, becomes wisdom. But to reach that sacred ground, a man must pass through the prison of the ego. And there, with humility, he must tear away one by one the masks of strength, and in that pilgrimage, find something the world tried to bury: his exposed humanity. Stripped of masks, of pretense, of the armor he was taught to wear, what remains is raw, real, sacred, and it is from this fragile, powerful place that the true path begins. But on that path, a man must learn one of the most painful and liberating truths. Not every woman deserves access to your body, and even fewer deserve access to your energy. Sex, when entered unconsciously, becomes more than just a fleeting encounter. It becomes an unguarded gateway. It's a channel through which your life force can leak away without your awareness. It feels like connection in the moment, but in truth, it is depletion. There are women who carry within them unhealed wounds. Chaos dressed as passion, and emotional addictions so deeply rooted that they become patterns. These women are often disconnected from themselves, fragmented by their own histories, and within them lies a void, one that is not yours to fill. Yet, when you merge with that void, believing its intimacy, something sacred within you is consumed. Your clarity dims. Your strength fades. Your direction falters. You leave the encounter not whole, but emptier than before. Because the body still remembers pleasure, you confuse what just happened as something meaningful. But it wasn't love. It wasn't healing. It was a soul exchange that drained you, you see, what she carries from her past, her unresolved trauma. Her emotional contracts with former lovers, her silent grief is not invisible. It lives in her body. It echoes through her presence. And sex, even when wrapped in desire, is a doorway. Through that doorway, those energies pass into you. No permission asked. No awareness required. And unless you are fully awake, that energetic fusion becomes contamination. You begin to feel fatigue, emotional fog, apathy, confusion that seems to appear out of nowhere. And you don't understand why. You meditate, you train, you quote spiritual texts. But none of it lands, because your boundaries are still asleep. You keep merging with women who live in storms and expect peace to follow. This form of intimacy is not visible to the eye, but it leaves wreckage in the soul. It doesn't matter how physically strong you are, how well you speak of consciousness, or how much charisma you project. If you continue to offer yourself, your body, your essence to women lost in chaos, you will remain in ruins. Not because they broke you, but because you abandoned your own discernment. And if you're not careful, the part of you that is most sacred or soul may one day stray so far from itself that it doesn't come back. So now, answer this honestly. How many times have you given yourself to someone thinking it was just desire, only to walk away more lost than before? How many times did you confuse chemistry with love and hand over your energy to someone who didn't even know how to care for her own? The answer may hurt, it may sting, but pain can be clarifying, because from this moment forward, you can never again say, I didn't know. Now you do. You understand that sex is not a game. It is a ritual. That the body is not just flesh, it is an oracle. Every time you enter someone's space, every time you offer yourself intimately, you are either rebuilding your soul or allowing yourself to be buried deeper in the dark. Now, the question is no longer about others. The question is you. Will you keep offering yourself to those who only want pieces of you? Or will you finally start demanding a level of presence, of awareness, of wholeness worthy of your soul? Because what we are revealing here is not just about sex. It is about who you are when no one is watching.